So, it's going to work a little bit differently. As you are taking notes, do not write down everything. It would take quite a while. Ash is a pretty wordy person, more so than I. But just little bitty, like tidbits of information, general ideas would probably be beneficial. If I could find my clicker thing. Oh, it's over here. So, I sent all of the questions that you asked yesterday, last night, and the ones that came in this morning. I got to her at lunch, so we would have probably done a Skype thing, but she's currently working, so somewhere in Indiana, walking around the woods. We're gonna go through just a day in the life kind of thing, what each season is dedicated to, because if you're working outside, what you're doing kind of depends on what season it is. And then some of the qualifications working in forestry needs. We're going to answer some of your questions. So first things first, this map right here, all of these green squares are all of the places in Indiana where she and her coworkers have specifically worked in the past year. So as you can see, they get a pretty wide spread. Everywhere from way up north to way down south. They technically only work in Indiana. That's just because the company they work for only has like permits in Indiana. So yeah, you can see that a lot of it is in the west central area, but they kind of have a big old spread. And yeah, so it works a little differently season to season. In the spring, they're mainly focused on prescribed burns and tree planting. So prescribed burns need to happen in the spring before it gets too hot and everything dries out. So whenever they go out to do a prescribed burn, they have to have all of the appropriate fire gear on them and be ready for anything that could happen. Being adaptable to any situation, especially when you are working with fire and wildlife, is a big deal. This is actually taken directly, like she took this on her phone and sent it to me one day, just out of the blue. So I'll be sitting around making a lesson plan. I'll just get a picture of her lighting a forest on fire, and we're like, oh, guess that's what you're doing today. So she took this picture specifically. As you can see, the fire's not necessarily harming these big trees, but just getting all of that fuel stuff off the bottom. And then when they're not doing prescribed burns, they plant trees in the spring, because when you plant a tree in the spring, it's going to have the longest amount of time to grow before winter hits. So they can do this by hand. They go out with shovels and stuff, or they could just have a rototiller that does it itself. And you just kind of sit and watch and observe to make sure that everything is going correctly. The summer is mostly invasive species removal. So they hike through the woods all day at assorted properties. They can be hired by the state or by private individuals. So they work for people in their own wooded areas, or they will work for state parks, whatever hires them to do that day. That's why they're all over Indiana. And they will either have a spray, like a pesticide spray that affects mainly these invasive species, or they will cut them out and then specifically spray the stumps so they don't grow back. The reason they do this in the summer is because invasive species grow faster in the late spring, early summer. So getting them out of there leaves resources for the native species to survive. Because the whole point of an invasive species, or not point, but the idea of an invasive species is that it takes up space that would have been given to natural plants. Can I get your mask up, please? So it's important to remove the invasive species so that other plants can grow. Yeah. Oh, it's a little bit of both. So when invasive species harm another plant, it's not usually directly. It's not like wrapping around and strangling it. It's sucking up all of the resources before the native plants can actually get them. So invasive species don't have natural predators, so they will just flourish. And when they do, they can create a lot of shade so that stuff at the bottom doesn't grow properly, or they can suck up all of the water, all the nutrients from the soil, and not let the other ones grow. Question. Some of the more common invasive species in Indiana. This is Japanese honeysuckle. So somebody took Japanese honeysuckle from Japan, brought it over, and it took over Indiana. So a lot of what they do is remove honeysuckle. This is garlic mustard. Garlic mustard is another invasive species. And then this one is the something olive. I think it's fall olive, something like that. Some sort of olive named tree. It berries out and it's like a bush. So all of these take up a lot of resources that would have been for natural plants. Yeah. Not necessarily. There are native species of honeysuckle, but these Japanese honeysuckle like can be planted in gardens. But if it does, you have to watch it so it doesn't like spread to the woods next door. But there are like more native honeysuckle bushes, but it's not necessarily something we can harvest. Good questions. Love it. Okay. In the fall, it's mostly about timber marking and writing forest management plans. Um, so they will go through the woods and mark trees for harvest. So they don't do the harvesting themselves. But if a forest or a person says, okay, I've got this wooded area, I want to harvest some of these trees and make a couple extra dollars, they will go through, they'll mark the ones that are safe to tear down or cut down. And then the people will come through and like hire a separate company to cut down the trees. They also help write forest management plans. So they will walk through the woods and use assorted governmental like softwares to create a profile of what a forest looks like, soil quality, plant species there, what it looks like topographically. They will hike through whatever property they are and take notes, find or analyze plots, and then go back home and make a plan. I got to see her over break, and she showed me one of these management plans. It was like 70 pages long because they have to have everything that the owner of the property needs, like and analyzing the property, what the goals for the property are, how to achieve that goal, and the plan to maintain it after the fact. So there's a lot of work that goes into these forest management plans. She says she really likes the fall because she just gets to hike around and collect data. It's not as physically intensive as some of the other months. There will be days where they will just like hike through the woods with like 40-gallon pesticide tanks on their back for like 12 hours. She loves it. They all love it, but it's a lot. It's not necessarily just walking around. In the winter, so they are moving into this kind of stuff. They will do harvest timber stand improvement. So timber stand improvements are ways that we can take, or they can take the existing trees in a forest and do what they can to support the healthy and good trees, and do so by kind of eliminating their competition. It's like, trying to think of a good analogy here. I'll think of one. So they will hike through thousands of acres of land and use a chainsaw to either cut down or girdle these trees. And girdling is just weakening it at one point, so naturally it takes course and breaks over time. to help improve the growing conditions for the more valuable tree species. So some tree species are better for the goodness gracious, ecosystem is the word I could not think of. Ecosystem. Some trees are more beneficial, meaning they can provide food or shelter to animal and insect species more than others. So they will kind of prioritize these tree species um, in order to help the wildlife and increase the biodiversity in a habitat. So if a forest is mostly one type of tree, they will cut down that tree that exists the most in there and plant a more diverse plot of trees. Yeah, so I know this is a lot. There's 2 pages of it. We're gonna work through it. A lot of it's kind of self-explanatory. The big things that you need in order to become a forester. The first thing is being certified in first aid. If you and 3 of your coworkers are just walking through the woods all day with chainsaws and something happens, you have to be able to treat whatever scenario is happening and get help as soon as possible and do what you can to make sure that if somebody gets hurt, you're not without any help. Maintain and operate chainsaws and other equipment, being able to use the tools that you have, making sure that you know what you have with herbicide, chemicals, and oil. That stuff, if it gets left behind, can be dangerous to the environment. So you have to make sure that you know how much you have on you when you get to a place, how much you have on you when you leave a place, in order so nothing gets left behind. Identifying trees, shrubs, and plants. That was a lot of what she did at school. Being able to just like look at a tree or a plant and tell what it is really important. So when you're walking through the woods removing invasive species, you know which ones are invasive and which ones not. It's actually kind of a cool party trick. If you're ever walking down the street and you're like, "Hey, what's that?" She will immediately tell you whatever plant you point at. It's kind of amazing. Um, Cutting and planting trees, obviously, working in adverse weather conditions. When you're out in the middle of the woods, miles from your car, if it starts to rain, as long as it is not thunderstorming, it's not worth it to go all the way back and wait it out. Um, and obviously, they work all year round, so snow and super cold weather or really, really hot weather in the summer doesn't stop them. They have to be ready to work in anything. Um, Writing those habitat management plans, being able to talk to people. That's a skill that's used in a lot of different jobs, etc. Being able to actually hold a conversation and manage what needs to happen with what the landowner wants. Timber marking, like I said, that's what they do in the fall. They go through, they know which trees are safe to cut down, which trees aren't. And I assume this is some sort of what's smiling? Some sort of certification that you can get through some sort of trade school esque thing, where you just have to go get your certification in being able to actually cut down these big trees. You don't have to write all this stuff down. You're fine. Yeah, you're good. That's a lot. I would not make you write all that down. Mixing a lot of herbicides, understanding how or what concentration of a herbicide will kill the plants you're trying to kill and what will just kill anything in its path or what will be harmless, knowing your concentrations there. Being able to carry the backpack sprayer is important. Being in a good enough physical condition to walk through the woods, carrying a heavy chainsaw all day is really, really important. Reading maps might not and this isn't just to like find your way in and out of the woods, though that is pretty important. But being able to use satellite data and topographical maps to see how elevation and soil composition is really, really important. this is what those sprayer backpacks that they wear look like. It's just a giant tank of liquid in a sprayer. Um, being able to orient yourself and navigate a forest, I will get lost in a department store. So unless I had somebody who was really good at directions with me, it is very easy for me to get lost in the woods. But they can spend all day in the woods and know exactly how to get back. Or if their phone GPSs die, they have to know a general direction to walk in order to get to where they need to be. Also, so they know that they don't leave the property that they're supposed to be managing. Um, there's a couple exams you have to take just to get your certifications. Same with firefighting. So just like firefighters have to get certified in order to be able to work with wildfires, you have to have a certain certification. Um, and being able to travel wherever you go and using this software. So ArcGIS is a really, really common software when it comes to mapping things. It is where the government takes all of the data they get from all of the satellite images, all of the soil composition data from over the years. They compile everything all into one, and you're able to kind of examine what an area would look like. It's really, really cool. This is an ArcGIS map, but it's just showing one thing. You can learn a heck of a lot from this software. Any questions so far? Okay. So your questions. If you do have more, if something pops up, feel free to go back to that Google form. I can create another document that's just questions and answers. She loves talking about this stuff. So whenever, if you ever have a question, feel free to ask. I'll check that regularly. I won't be able to like sit here and talk about them, but I can get answers in a big class spreadsheet on Canvas. So if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in that Google form. We'll get to them. So the first question was how they knew that they wanted to pursue forestry. I think this is one of our longer answers. But she started out in engineering, as a lot of people do at Purdue, realized it wasn't for her, and wanted to travel around the country or state and work outdoors. So she had a friend that knew somebody who ran their own forestry business. She was able to get in summer internship there and decided to work full time for them, and that's what she's doing now. She actually majored in wildlife with a forestry minor, and then just took forestry and ran with it. So she has mostly a wildlife background, but has that forestry kind of thing. Let's see. I think that's it. Yeah. So that one. If you were to walk into a forest and just chop down a tree willy nilly, would you get in trouble? If it is a state forest, yes. If it is not your own land, then yes. But if you own a certain property, you can do with that property whatever you wish. So, like if you were to walk into a state protected area, you get in trouble because you have to be qualified to safely dispose of trees if you are going to work for a state forest. Let's see. What do you have to? What kind of things do you have to major in order to work in forestry? If you want to work for a massive like big governmental agency, odds are an actual degree in forestry is what they're looking for. But when it comes to being something like she is, or working high up for an individual company, things like wildlife, environmental management, forestry will get you where you need to go. It doesn't have to be specifically forestry, just something in that wheelhouse. And then you don't even have to really. There are some positions at these corporations that you don't need a degree for, but if you have the certifications, that'll do it. So take a couple tests, get your wildfire fighter stuff. You don't necessarily need to go to college to get a degree. in the forestry management area. But if you want to work in the higher up, like management plan creation, that's when a degree will come in handy. Most exciting part is to walk around in the woods all day and find fun little animals to help out. This is literally her. She sent a bunch of pictures of us one day where there was a baby deer like trapped in a hole somewhere. They just like yeeted it out of there and it ran off. About every day or two, I will just get a picture of her holding up a turtle, and like this is the 6th one I found today. So you can tell she's really really into wildlife. But they see a lot of different animals throughout the woods, which is why she likes doing what she does. Let's see, snakes, turtles, bobcat, deer. Yeah. Oh, prescribed burns. This is also her. What do you have to like? What kind of chemical is actually involved? It's a mixture of gasoline and diesel. But you have to be really, really careful with it. Before you can even get started with the drip torch, you have to create a fire break. So if you were to have a wooded area, all right, if we wanted to burn this portion of it, if we started here, we would need to clean out all of the possible fuel or all of the possible plants, leaves, to make this little segment bare dirt. So when the fire moves this way, when it gets to that dirt, it doesn't have anything else to burn. So it'll move through this way, get to that fire break, and that is where the fire will stop. But they have a special tool called the drip torch that uses extra fuel, kind of like a mini flamethrower, to start it up. And then, yeah, we are going pretty quick today. Yeah. Okay. So that is the typical day in the life of a forester. I don't have anything else for you today. So I want you to use this last 20 minutes. If you haven't done any of the exit tickets, or if you're missing an assignment for this class, use this time to catch up. Make sure that you've got all of those assignments turned in. Everything that I have is graded so far, so go ahead and check Canvas. It is the end of week 1, so to ensure that we don't fall behind going into week 2, try to use this time to catch up. If you have any questions for Asher Mason, please either ask me or drop them in that Google form, because I will continue to send them. She's very excited about helping out today. So, yeah. Your time is your own.